Hi, I'm Neha Matthews, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show.
Initially, they moved it to 2G. Then all of internet went, and by 1 o'clock, SMS phones, everything had shut down completely.
This is Naveed Iqbal. She's Indian Express's Jammu and Kashmir correspondent. Naveed and I would text on WhatsApp about her stories, and we'd record episodes over WhatsApp call. Until on August 4th, I realized we couldn't.
And since that day, for the first 40 days, we had no landlines, no phones. Subsequently, landlines were restored and slowly phones. But till now, we have no SMS and no internet at all. So that's how we've been.
On August 5th, 2019, the central government abrogated Article 370 of the Constitution, which gave the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir special status. In anticipation of that, mobile and internet services were cut. Politicians said that it was to quell unrest because Article 370 was a sensitive topic and to curb the activity of terrorist groups in the area. 137 days later today, Jammu and Kashmir is now a union territory, and lay people in the Kashmir Valley still don't have access to the internet. India is now the only democratic country in the world which has seen such a long internet shutdown. So on today's episode, we deep dive into internet shutdowns. How do they happen? Why are we seeing this rise of internet shutdowns across the world? Our tech reporter Karishma Mehrotra explains why India has seen so many this year, and Access Now's Ramanjeet Singh Cheema talks about how these shutdowns happen and why they are problematic. But first, what is it like to experience an internet shutdown for an extended period of time? Naveed joins us over call to explain.
Many people have told us that they are struggling to get birth and death certificates. Like students are queuing up for hours outside government kiosks, fill exam forms or admission forms. And this is essential documentation for which everyone's struggling on a daily basis, though the municipal commissions or corporations denies it. And these are matters that can be resolved, at least to some extent, with the restoration of broadband services. It's been really difficult. Kashmir has seen a return of STD booths, because I remember in our chat earlier, I told you that when mobiles weren't still restored, people were queuing up outside these STD booths and just to try to make one phone call and tell people on the other end that, I'm fine. And even now, so with SMS not being restored, the thing is only service messages have been restored on postpaid BSNL connections. The things that people were struggling with, like in terms of verifying transactions as such, all of that still doesn't happen. A lot of, not just banking, students who are filling exam forms, they're struggling to get OTPs to confirm their registrations. And not many students have postpaid BSNL connections. When we met parents at the DC office during the first month or so, when there was one landline connection, people were trying to get in touch with their children who were studying outside. They said that we don't know if they have money, if they have money to come back, if they have money to survive where they are. They have no way of coming to us. We have no way of going to them. That was a real struggle then.
WhatsApp accounts also deactivate after 120 days of inactivity. Naveed says every day she sees people disappearing off WhatsApp groups. And for her, as a reporter, life has not been easy amidst this shutdown.
So reporting and filing have not been easy. Primarily the fact that one has to travel to this government facility just to even read the papers in the morning is exasperating. And this facility is only available in one district. So if you're a journalist anywhere else outside of Srinagar, you have to travel to the capital. And also after some outage on the borrowed internet that we have, we were able to get some adequate space for us to file. Because just this past week, in fact, because otherwise many of us were just squatting on the floors waiting for our turn to get 15 minutes of internet every day. But now we've been allotted a separate room, so there's a little more space, but still just one computer.
Now, India is not the only country experiencing internet shutdowns. It's a rising trend across the world in some areas. But how are these shutdowns justified? And can they be seen as a human rights issue? Next, Ramanjeet Singh Cheema joins us. He is the Senior International Counsel and Asia Pacific Policy Director at Access Now, and he also chairs the Internet Freedom Foundation, a civil liberties organization that looks at online freedoms. Raman explains how internet shutdowns happen, whether they are tracked, and whether there's ever a legitimate reason for one. Raman, I want to ask you about internet shutdowns. When we talk about a shutdown, how do you shut down an internet? Is there, is it like pushing a button, or are there various sources that have to be navigated?
often popularly it's sometimes been regarded as an internet kill switch. So that gives you the visual, image of having a big red kill button that switches off the internet. But in reality, there are many different ways in which it happens. One of the first internet shutdowns that most people very well, that was well documented, was the Egypt shutdown during the Egyptian protests of several years ago, where in that case, the government there essentially had the telecom company switch off the fiber network that connected Egypt to the global internet. And so essentially the entire country went down. But since then, we use various different ways to switch off internet access. In a more broader way, it's any disruption of the internet, it's any targeted disruption. This is the definition that, in fact, the Keep It On Coalition, which is an international coalition of nearly 100 plus organizations globally that work on tracking internet shutdowns, they adopted, which is to recognize that an internet shutdown is essentially when somebody, normally a government, intentionally disrupts the internet or mobile apps in order to control what people say or do. And this definition, which is up online on accessnow.org/keepiton, it also recognizes that shutdowns are often sometimes called blackouts or kill switches. And so the focus is this fact, right? It's an intentional disruption of electronic communications, specifically targeting the internet or other electronic communications, in order to try and make access to communications and access to information unusable in a certain territory within a certain period of time. So that's the sort of technical definition that people use.
Okay, and this needn't be just all of our internet services. It could be perhaps only everybody in India using Facebook. Maybe we could be stopped from using Facebook.
Yes, it could sometimes be targeted disruption of a mobile app. That's often normally what you would regard as perhaps website blocking or web content blocking. But the more common trend you see in India and many other countries in the developing world or emerging internet states is a phenomena of targeted internet shutdowns on, say, mobile connections. So you say that we'll switch off 4G or 5G or even 3G networks. You may not shut down landline or fixed line connectivity because often government networks or banks also use those networks. Although in the case of Kashmir and as other Indian states, we have sometimes seen total internet shutdowns as well. But what's very common is the shutdown of mobile internet communications or the slowing down of mobile internet communications. For example, moving people off 3G to edge, so you can't easily send video messages or use audio calls or video streaming on online apps, for example.
I mean, if you and I, if our internet was to be shut, would there be any signs that would help us realize that it's just, it's not our phones being wonky, it may be a shutdown?
That's tricky, unfortunately. So, for example, even in India, it's been the case very often that you don't know why it's happened. You suddenly just see signal is dropped or data is not working or data uploads are very slow. In some cases, in some states in India, the telecom companies have proactively messaged people. They have sent text messages to their subscribers saying, for example, in Rajasthan, that we've had to shut down the internet due to government orders. But unfortunately, that's still not consistent even across the full breadth of the Indian Union. And in other cases, you only get to know because of broadcast or news updating you saying that the internet's been ordered to be shut down. And this is actually one of the genuine problems, that the central government does not disclose clearly or publicly when a shutdown is happening, even though communications is a federal subject, which means that the union government is in charge of the overall issue, even though the state governments might be ordering shutdowns.
And around the world, we see this happening. It seems to be exercised more and more as well. Is there a reason? Are there common reasons that are given by governments when they decide to shut internet?
So you're right, it's definitely a growing trend. It's unfortunately more of a growing trend in certain regions rather than others. So you've seen that shutdowns have been incredibly high in the Asia-Pacific region, but to be honest, in South Asia, and of that, India is ahead of most countries globally by several factors. And then it's parts of Eastern Africa, Francophone Africa, as well as sometimes elements of the Middle East. It's very often governments claiming national security or law and order concerns, but you've seen even other diverse common reasons. People trying to say we've shut down the internet because of school examinations or examinations to central civil services or civil service exams where people are cheating, and the response has been to say we've shut down the internet, and other trends like that as well. So it's sometimes difficult to find common trends. There's certain common ones that I just mentioned, but what's particularly unique in India is the number of shutdowns, the breadth of them, the scale of how it happens, and how it happens across a range of state governments as well as now the central government itself.
Okay, and is there any way to track these? Can we tell how many times India has maybe seen shutdowns across the country in the last year?
You can. So there are websites and organizations that do this. The Keep It On Coalition that I mentioned, one such tracker, for example, internetshutdowns.in, run by the Software Freedom Law Center India, sflc.in. It has a internet shutdown tracker. And in fact, if you see that tracker, and that's publicly online, it's revealed that the internet's been shut down in India quite a few times already this year. And the Keep It On tracker, which Access now maintains internally ourselves, we have seen that a large number of shutdowns in India, as I said, over 100 plus within a certain time period already. And if I can just pause and just mention, like for example, I just rechecked the tracker on internetshutdowns.in, and there it's already showing. They show that in India in 2019 there were at least 93 shutdowns, and the Keep It On tracker, of course, has its own data which shows that the number of shutdowns is considerable across India in 2019. And remember, these are just shutdowns that people have been able to track publicly, often based on news stories. In parts of India's northeast, for example, in Manipur or elsewhere, shutdowns are often ordered quite actively in certain districts or elsewhere in the entire state as well. But that doesn't often get as reported in the mainstream Indian media, and therefore is not tracked by groups such as us or others.
Last year, we did see that there was a spate of lynchings that happened on rumors of child lifting. And the government seemed to say that this was happening because this misinformation was being spread on WhatsApp. So when it comes to, say, an internet shutdown to stop something like that, would that be seen as a legitimate reason, or do studies show that internet shutdowns have in fact helped at any point?
So I think that's a challenge, right? That state governments or even police authorities or even the central government have tried to say that shutdowns have helped them combat disinformation. And in fact, that's what I think they need to admit, that they in fact have started using shutdowns as a standard operating procedure practically in order to combat whatever they see as disinformation. But it's not just disinformation, they do it for many other reasons. As I mentioned previously, even to like combat school examination cheating, which they've already been censured by a state high court for doing that. But the bigger point is there's nothing that so far establishes the clear value of this. The government normally responds by saying that you can never calculate the economic value of human life. We have saved it so many times. It's a fast-moving situation, and you can't document this post facto. But the reality is that this near standard operating procedure usage of shutdowns, there is nothing that has been done to establish its clear value as a law enforcement tool. And instead, you do see the clear economic costs of these shutdowns across the breadth of the Indian Union. You are seeing research from groups like the Indian Council for Research in International Economic Relations, ICRIER, a Delhi-based think tank, which has shown the incredible economic costs due to shutdowns in India. And you're seeing globally the incredible recognition from human rights groups and others that shutdowns cause grave harms to human rights and to social stability, right? It's at a critical moment when you want access to emergency services or you want to talk to your family members that you can't contact them. And there are many people who say that it in fact makes it easier for rumors to flow by people who can't access trusted information online. And you also perhaps need to remember, I think it's useful to remember Indian history, right? During times of targeted violence and killings in India, including in the 1984 riots, it was the absence of access to news and information that made those killings possible and made it easier for mobs to be inflamed. So I think we need to learn from our history, and this justification that's sometimes given that shutdowns helps combat misinformation. In my view, there's been no clear data shown to establish that.
Kashmir isn't the only place experiencing an internet shutdown in India currently. In the wake of the Anti-Citizenship Amendment Act protests, internet has been cut in several parts of the country, albeit for a shorter period of time. Karishma Mehrotra, who reports on the intersection of technology, society, and politics for the Indian Express, joins us to explain how these shutdowns have been often preemptive and problematic in many ways. Currently, Kashmir isn't the only place experiencing an internet shutdown in India, right?
No, after the Citizenship Amendment Bill was passed through Parliament and became an act, there were several anti-CAA protests across the country, which led to internet shutdowns across the Northeast, as well as several parts of West Bengal and some districts in UP.
And I wanted to ask you now, across the world, why are internet shutdowns, why are they typically used?
So often what happens is that law enforcement officials want to either prevent the congregation of people, or they want to stymie the flow of misinformation and rumors on social media. So it's often argued from a law enforcement perspective to help sort of retain public order and security. So across the world, more and more these internet shutdowns are being used. In India specifically, gradually they're being used more as a preventative measure rather than reactionary. So we're seeing that even for planned events or for days in advance, the law enforcement officials at a state level are deciding to shut down the internet.
Okay. When you say preventive, though, could you give me some examples? Say in 2019, were there major events that saw internet shutdowns before they happened?
So one is the Ayodhya verdict. We saw that the day of the verdict, there were multiple shutdowns, and even the day after the verdict. And that was in places where there weren't necessarily any incidents of violence, but it was a preventative measure to stop any occurrence of violence. And they happened mostly around UP and Rajasthan at that time. The CAB protests are another example of preventative measures across the nation.
And I mean, this sounds like trying to maintain law and order sounds like a legitimate reason, but is there a reason why, say, internet shutdowns across the world could be problematic? I mean, how would they affect the population?
Well, many different organizations, including the UN, as well as the Kerala High Court, have deemed the internet and access to internet as a fundamental right. So from the perspective of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, halting communication networks is often seen as a hindrance to that. So from a rights perspective, many groups find problems with internet shutdowns, as well as from an economic perspective. Business in the country is more and more relying on digital means. And if you cut those, the economic impact has seemed to be quite heavy. In fact, iCare did a study on this where they found that the economic cost to shutdowns was something over $3 billion over the past 5 years in 16,000 hours of internet shutdowns in India alone. So you have economic impact, you have a rights perspective impact. Also, the country is entering into more of a digital governance model where many services are now relying on the internet. So you have examples of school examinations or schemes and benefits that require some sort of digital connection. And as the country progresses even further in that direction, these shutdowns will have more and more of an impact on the daily lives of people.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.